You're here. Welcome to the Masterminding Success podcast. They say if you want to be successful in business and in life, then surround yourself with successful people. So pull up a seat. The mastermind is about to begin.
Glad you could join us for another episode of the Masterminding Success podcast. We're your hosts, Keith Wheeler.
And Nuria Corby.
What are we talking about today, Nuria?
Oh, today is an interesting one. We're going to talk about Q4, quarter four, and maybe a recap about our quarter four and what we're planning to do for the next quarter four. So quarter four is always something that we're always waiting for, aren't we, Keith? How was yours?
My quarter four, I'm going to be completely honest. It was a good quarter four. It was not as good as it's been in the past, for whatever reasons that may be. But it definitely, Q4 was definitely better than the other quarters throughout the year, just because it's the end of the year, it's around the holidays, people are spending more money, and so I definitely saw an uptick in sales in all areas really. But yeah, it wasn't as great as I was anticipating.
I know, and I think a lot of people have said the same thing, and I thought it was just me, and then when I looked in the groups and everything, I saw other people talk about it. I can't complain because obviously it's still a great month, but it was definitely lower than last year's quarter four, and I think my last January was even better than this quarter four, than this December, I should say, because quarter four is obviously October, November, and December. And if you add them all up, it was still a good quarter four. But December, I found kind of disappointing because it's that expectation you have for December to make more than in the rest of the year. But that didn't happen this year. And I think it's interesting. I've spoken to several people about what they think, why that might be. I've got my own theories. What are your thoughts about it? Do you think, it was like that across the board for everybody? Do you have a theory on why that was this year?
I think there's a lot of things that kind of add into that. Part of it is, globally, the economy is not what it's been, and so that's obviously going to eat into it. People are going to spend less time, buying things, but also, there's more competition. There's more, YouTube channels like ours out there where, we're giving tips to just everyday people and, showing them how easy, and I say easy in air quotes, but how easy it is to create and publish books. And, and so because the competition is greater, that this, if people are spending less money and there's more stuff out there, then it's just inevitable that you're going to make less money than what you have in previous years. I do say that one thing that, while I'm always hopeful for Q4 to be, as great as everybody talks about, and it has been in years past, one thing I've done for my business I try to Q4 proof my business. I try to make things that are more evergreen. Obviously around the holidays, people are going to buy more. And so, hopefully you will still see an uptick, but I don't like the ebb and flows of doing things like, chasing niches and, chasing trends and things like that. So, like I said, I think there are a lot of things that went into Q4, and it's not just books. I'm in, as you know, I'm in a lot of different things that I do, wear a lot of different hats, and all of them were good in Q4, but none of them were the wow that I've seen in previous years.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's interesting what you said as well, because a lot of what you said was exactly what other people have said as well, about the economy being, maybe that was an influence on it, or but it's funny because my whole year has been quite steady where books are concerned. So and I like what you said about, it's you don't like that up and down sort of thing.
Right.
And I can totally agree with that, because I found that I'm more at ease now, where my whole year is pretty steady, rather than having that up and down and then the big spike for quarter four. I much prefer having a business that's steadier during the year. Maybe it doesn't go up quite that much in quarter four, but it's steady throughout the other months.
Right.
And I quite like that. And I think you're right in, in saying you're publishing more evergreen topics and books, because I think that helps. If you publish a Valentine's Day book or whatever, there's only really one day in the year where that's relevant. So it is a good idea. But the interesting thing is that I thought, even though I agree about the economy and everything like that, we've had bad economies in other years as well, and it's never been like this year. Quarter four has always still been quite a big year. So I was wondering whether there might be other reasons for it. And you and I were talking earlier about our Christmas, and I was saying that we did a Christmas without presents this year, without gifts. And I'm not the only one. I've seen several people doing that as well. And also, I don't know if you have Secret Santas in the UK, in the US. We have that here in the UK as well. And one of the books, because I always like to look on the top 100 books, and there was one that stood out, which was number 23 here in the UK, or 26, I can't remember. And it was a book that you give to your boss as a Secret Santa gift or something like that. And it made me think that maybe I didn't have enough books that can be given as gifts. But then on the other hand, I thought, well, any book can be given as a gift.
Right.
So again, that was, I kind of keep changing my mind over what it might be that caused this quarter four to be less dramatic than other quarter fours. And I still can't put my finger on it. But all I know is that I want to plan for the next quarter four and publish more books, more evergreen, as you say, but also maybe try some books that you can give as gifts and see what happens next year. So that's my plan of attack.
Yeah, I mean, and that makes perfect sense. And to be honest, I mean, as much as I like to look back at at Q4 and see what I can learn from it. Other than that, there's nothing else you can do about it. You can't change it, and while we were saying, you're not necessarily seeing that spike, that big high spike, but also you don't see that big drop, from December to January, if you're doing more, more consistent, more evergreen. So yeah, I agree. I think, I try to take away what I can from it. I do know from a personal perspective, as far as me and my business, and you and I talked about this before we started recording, but I had I was juggling a lot of things at the, around pretty much the whole second half of 2023. And so because of that, I wasn't able to, focus in on, the aspect of, books or whatever, aspect of my business that I'm looking to grow. And so what I really took from the results I saw in Q4 is just driving home the importance of consistency. I talk about that pretty much ad nauseum, on my channel and in the books I write and everything else, trying to tell people that in order to really build a brand, the best thing you can do is be consistent. And so, that's something that was just, I've said it so many times that sometimes you kind of just forget it, like it just becomes second nature, and you say it, and it's just something you say, not necessarily something that you live and that you show. And in all honesty, in the last part of 2023, I wasn't doing that. I wasn't being consistent with the books I was putting out, putting them out consistently, and the other things that I do, shirts or whatever merch that you're working on. And so, that's something that, while I can't change what happened in Q4, I can learn from it and plan better and plan more accordingly for the next Q4, which I know a lot of people are going to say it's only January and you're already planning for Q4. And I think that's really important. I think it's important to plan ahead, so that way you're not just, either you don't miss it, you don't miss the boat, but also you don't just, end up having to throw a bunch of things together in order to still meet whatever quote goals that you have.
Yeah. Absolutely agree with all of that because, yes, it's only January, but like last year just flew by for me. I
Yeah.
think that, if we think it's only January and it's a long way away, but publishing books is not something you can do quickly anyway. And
Or
especially
at least
if
not something you
not
should do quickly.
nothing you should, yeah, absolutely. And so I think it is important to plan well before it's even needed. Apart from that, it takes time for a book to establish itself on Amazon as
Mhm.
well. You need to build up your readership, your reviews. There's so much to it. I think you can never really plan early enough, so.
Right.
And yes, and I think you're right because I've had a similar sort of quarter four to you in that I've been very busy with other things as well, and maybe I neglected the publishing side of things. And again, I think that the important thing is to just learn from what you've experienced. And I like to analyze things when when things are not the norm that
Right.
happens normally, or if they are the norm, then I like to analyze it to see how I can grow it or how I can improve it.
Right.
And that's the kind of mindset I'm in at the moment because I'm thinking back, and I expected this quarter four to be bigger than it was, and I like to look into why that is. Why did I expect it to be bigger? First of all,
Right.
that's a good question because
That's a good question.
why do we do that? But then also, why wasn't it as good as last year? And I've got several ideas of why that could be, and we've talked about some, but really we don't know. We
Right.
can never really know exactly what that is, and the only thing we can do is plan ahead. But I'm quite happy that my year has been steady, and even though I don't get the big ups and downs, it's less of a roller coaster ride. And
Right.
so you have to also see the benefits in it, I think. But other than that, I think it's important to plan now. And you said about consistency, even if you're not quite sure what you should do something, because
Right.
it's that consistency that's going to, the more books you have, but they have to be good as well. So
Mhm.
the better quality they have to be. All of that contributes to your sales throughout the year as well as in
Right.
in quarter four. But yeah, lots of plans. Have you got like a plan of attack for this year?
I'm still finalizing my plan of attack for the year. I
Mm,
one of the big things I'm doing is I'm dialing back a lot. I'm being more. I was telling you about my youngest granddaughter when she was opening her Christmas presents. She's only 2, and she was very methodical about the way she was opening her presents, and then showing them off, and then giving them a hug, and then putting them away. And I'm learning something from her is I'm actually going to be more methodical with my business, and more intentional, I guess, is
mm,
probably a better way to put it. Not just doing things to do it. You're not just busy work. There's a difference between work and busy work. Do I need to publish 100 books, or can I just publish 10 really good books,
mhm.
and making sure that they're in the right niches, and that they're good quality and things like that. And the same thing from all the different areas of my business is what areas of the business did I maybe neglect last year that I need to kind of double down on, and then also which ones did I maybe spend more time on last year than I should have, and kind of just like we were saying with having a consistent flow, and not having the peaks and valleys. I need to start doing that same thing with my business in not just in Q1, but all throughout 2024 is having my business plan out. I'm really big on goals. Goals are super important to me.
Yeah.
And one thing that people tend to do, and I don't want to belabor this too much, but one thing that people tend to do around the new year is they make resolutions. And I don't like resolutions because most New Year's resolutions don't make it because they're not goals. And there's a difference between a resolution and a goal. And so I'm intentionally making goals, setting timelines, what I plan on doing when I need it done by. And I have found, at least in my own, not just in my business, but in my personal life as well, when I set goals with tangible deadlines, I'm much more likely to achieve them.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't even set any, I don't have any resolutions anymore. And that was a big thing here in the UK. And we used to always ask each other, what's your resolution? And you're so spot on. I think you just cleared that up for me, because they're not goals. So resolutions are
Yeah.
just good intentions. And who does that? We've all got
Yeah.
good intentions, but do we really go through with them? I don't know. But
I can say that the only resolution I've had for the last, I think it's going on 6 years now. And it might sound kind of hokey, but I made a resolution 6 years ago that every day that I go out and I do stuff, that I make one stranger smile, and that's something that isn't really a goal per se. And I think the reason why I've been able to keep it is because it's just the nature of who I am. Like I'm a dad, so I'm always making dad jokes, and I'm always, being, being goofy and things like that. So I'm always making people
yeah.
smile or laugh anyway. And so it was more of a just trying to make a little bit more of a conscious effort to do that. And so that's been the only resolution in my 40 years of being alive that I've actually been able to keep. So yeah, so goals to me are way more achievable than just generic resolutions.
Spot on there. I think, yeah, I've got a few goals. And the other thing with goals is I try to set quite low goals, so I know I can reach them. And then I can try another one a bit higher,
Right.
but I find that useful, set yourself very low goals because then you can really achieve them and feel that sense of satisfaction, and
Yeah.
it spurs you on to go for another goal and see if you can do that as well. I mean, that's the plan for this year for me as well. The problem with me is I've got so many ideas now and very little time, which is the complete opposite to when I started all of this, because I
Hmm.
had a lot more time, but the ideas were hard to come by. And the longer you keep doing this, the more ideas come to you, because you're kind of taking in information from every angle, and the more information I take in, the more I try to apply that information to something that I can do with it, or I just get lots of ideas, but it's applying them, and this is where what you said earlier comes in. Be more intentional and be more, what did you say your granddaughter was? She was more methodical. That's the
Methodical.
thing.
Yeah.
Yes. And if you're methodical about it, and if you look at all your ideas in one go, it's overwhelming. But if you take out the ones that appeal to you the most, and then maybe take away some of the ones that you think are not, maybe not bringing you the effect that you want to get from that, or the results that you want to get. So just whittle it down to the few that you can achieve without too much effort, and maybe do it that way. That's what I'm going to try and do this year. I'm definitely going to take some of those ideas and be more methodical as well.
Yeah.
I think that was a good way to put it. Yeah, be intentional about it, and get rid of the ones that might not have the results that you want to achieve. I mean, I always say no time is ever wasted, because whatever you do, even if it doesn't get you results, it's still a learning
Right.
experience. So it's not wasted. But I've had a lot of learning experiences
Yeah.
so far. I've made a lot of mistakes, and I think now is the time to apply the knowledge that I gained from making those mistakes. So I think 2024 is hopefully the year I learn from past mistakes. What's
Yeah.
yours? What's
Yeah.
yours going to be?
Yeah, I mean, I think it really comes down to, um, being making more conscious decisions. Like I agree with most of what you said. The only issue I've seen is, while I agree that there's no time waste, even if a failure is still a success, it's still a learning curve, or still a learning moment. Um, the one area that I want to streamline is um, how I find those mistakes. I don't, because it can still be a waste of time. Is the amount of time I put into it worth the lesson I learned? You know, and so I want to make sure that, like what you're saying before is, we've got so many ideas, and I really think it comes down to setting goals, and I'm a big person that likes to make lists and stuff. Make a list of the ideas that I have, and again, being methodical, and finding out, which ones have the better, most success, most chance of success. And so I don't, my plan for 2024 is to not, is to, when I make a mistake, which is going to happen, when I have a learning moment, that the amount of time I put into it is worth the lesson I learned. Spending months working on something just to learn, that wasn't the right niche, because especially as we've been doing this, that's something I should have known before. It's just, did I not put enough forethought into it and enough research into it? Because that's another thing I see people do is they've got an idea, they've done some keyword research, and they're like, okay, there's some keywords that are selling, and then they just go with it, and they're like, okay, but did you do enough research in what the interior should look like? Did you do enough research into what readers are already saying about books that are already out there by looking at the reviews that already exist on your competitors' books? Things like that. Putting more time into the front end of it, into the research part of it, before I even commit to creating it. And I'm not talking about spending months, on researching one thing, but as opposed to just, I've spent 10 minutes looking at it. It looks good. I've got experience. I'm going to just create it. Spending a little bit more time researching it to make sure that the amount of effort I'm putting into it is worth what the potential results will be.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, there is that aspect to it. You can spend way more time than you should on something,
Right.
and in a way that is a mistake, and we should know better sometimes, but I still make that mistake.
Oh yeah, I do too. I do. That's why it's my main goal. My
Yeah,
main goal for 2024 is, again, is just being, planning things out better. I think
yeah,
is and making sure that, um that I plan for success, but you also need to plan for the failures. Like, what are you going to do if this doesn't work out? What are you going to do if, you know, if Q4 isn't like you expect it to be? What are your plans?
yeah,
What can you do? Because you can't change what happened in the past, but you can learn from it.
yeah,
And so what can we learn from this past Q4 to make 2024 and the Q4 in 2024 more consistent, more better, And
yeah.
so those are things that are my biggest takeaways from this past Q4.
Yeah, I think, that is a really good way of looking at it, and I think I should do that as well. The other thing though is life throws you curveballs all the time.
All the time.
And
Yeah.
then the other thing you have to do is, obviously you can plan things as much as you like, but life says, "Oh, you planned that? Or let's
Yeah.
see what you do with this." And then they give you
Yeah.
something, completely different. So I think the other thing is to and I'm pretty good at dodging the curveballs and also
Right.
dealing with them when they do come. So I think I'm kind of getting better at is it a plan B? I don't know, because I haven't planned that part, because sometimes
Right.
these things come by surprise. But I'm getting good at being flexible, maybe, taking
Yeah.
things and turning them round in a way that, that maybe they turn out okay after all. Sometimes they turn out even better, so you
Right.
just never know. You have to, I think, yeah, staying positive is, there's a resolution. I will be more positive. No, I think, it's just one of those things. You can plan things, but sometimes your best laid plans just don't work out. And
Yeah,
then
absolutely.
it's about being flexible as well. So um, we'll see what this year brings, I think. And then we'll talk about
Yeah.
it next year again.
Yeah. 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 I mean, because a lot of it also comes down to, um, when I talk about making goals and setting goals and things like that, it's not hard and fast,
Mm.
like life happens, that's the best way to put it. And so I think one of the biggest skills you can have is the ability to assess when those curveballs come, you
Mm.
know,
Yeah.
is it worth, do I need to change my timelines on these goals? Do I need to change the goals? Do I need to pivot and, this isn't
Mm.
working? Do I need to pivot to a different niche or a different way of doing things or whatever? Like being able to on the fly pivot. And that's one reason why I cannot stress enough how helpful social media groups are, Facebook groups or whatever, where you any way that you can interact with like-minded people. And so you're not in it by yourself.
Yeah.
You can, is perfect example is us talking about Q4, so
Mm.
many people thought that Q4 was just not so great for them
Mm.
until, they start talking to others and like, oh no, wasn't that great for you either? Okay. So it's not just you.
Yeah.
And the same thing is when these curveballs happen, you know, being able to assess, should I just stop this and move on to the next project? Or should I just change my goals, change my timelines? Being able to assess that on the fly, it's a huge skill to have, is to
Yeah.
be able to be able to assess. And again, if you don't have that, maybe you haven't been in this industry, long, again, reach out to others and say, either have you had this happen to you? How would you have handled it or whatever? Doesn't mean you have to listen to them, but getting other people's perspective is a great
Mm.
way to, one, learn from other people's mistakes, which is what wise people do, right?
Yeah.
But also, it's the worst thing you can do is get hit with a curveball and then just freeze, you know. So a
Yeah.
good thing is, and I'm sure you do it, I do it, is try as much as possible to plan ahead and see, if a curveball happens, what will I do?
Mm.
Obviously we can't account for everything, but just being prepared for it is a step in the right direction.
Yeah, that is such good advice because it is quite terrifying when something, if you've planned something and something comes up that you didn't expect, and you use the words, what did you say? Should I change the goal, or shall I change
Right.
what I'm doing? And that can be quite scary because when you've invested time into something, it's very hard to then pivot and think of something else and leave
Hmm.
this when you've invested
Right.
your time and your efforts into that. And that can be quite scary, and that can be paralyzing because you don't know, what do I do now? And I think your idea of going into one of the Facebook groups or social media is a brilliant idea because there's your support system
Right.
almost, where you can get ideas from other people. Um, and sometimes these groups can be critical, but they're also very helpful. They more or less everybody goes through the same things now and again.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of experience in those groups. So I find them very, very helpful in some ways because when you're stuck in something, it's that expression, you can't see the wood for the trees. You're so
Right.
focused on something that alternatives are kind of sometimes not coming automatically,
Right.
and that's what we sometimes need, an alternative way to do what we planned to do if that doesn't work out. So yeah, that's a good tip. Social
Yeah.
media groups and just a friendly ear is what we sometimes need.
Right. Right.
But yeah.
And and kind of what you were just alluding to is, if you end up in a group and everybody's mentality is different, and what you can handle as far as like criticism and everything else. And so if you find a group that you don't feel comfortable in, there's other groups.
Yeah.
There's a group there literally is a group for pretty much everyone. You
Yeah.
know, in general, people who publish books many times are introverts. And so, if you find yourself in a group that is more critical and you're not ready for that kind of criticism, then see if you can find a different group. Like I
Mm.
said, there's plenty of them out there. Now understand that when you're putting when you're putting something out for the public, whether it's, you're creating a book, you're creating a t-shirt, whatever, you're going to get criticism, so you need to be prepared for that. That's just ingrained in what we're doing. Anytime you create something for somebody else to see, whether it's art or whatever, you're going to get critiques. And so you need to understand that. But I do know I've been in groups where they're much more critical than other groups. And so,
Definitely.
if you find a group and, maybe they're not being as helpful as you want them to be, obviously they're, most of them are not going to be giving out, niches and things like that. But, giving tips, things that they've learned over the years that they've been doing it. If you don't find a helpful group that you feel comfortable in, like I said, just look for another one.
Absolutely. And criticism is a good thing, but it depends how you criticize something.
Right.
If it makes the other person feel bad, then it's not a good way to, you can give criticism without putting the other person down. And unfortunately, there are groups like that where there's several people, but I would say, like you said, if you're not feeling comfortable in a group, there are always groups that are different where you are more comfortable. But criticism is part of, feeling uncomfortable is sometimes how you grow. If we were all in our comfort zones, we wouldn't really get any better. So sometimes it's a good idea to just embrace it and think, okay, I'm just going to ignore the insulting bit about the criticism, but I'm going to take it on board and see if they've got a point. That's another way to look at it sometimes. But yeah, you have to feel comfortable, and there's a way of giving out criticism as well. So, but I think it's a brilliant idea to look for support in groups and in social media. Any social media platform has sort of a support system of people that are in your topic, in your niche, in what you're doing. So whether that's publishing books or whether that's creating t-shirts, or funny thing is we were talking about Q4 and the book side of things has been very different, but product wise, I think it's not been too bad this year. So maybe it's something about books. I don't know.
No, I agree. I mean, like my shirts have definitely, and my other merchandise has definitely, it's still not as high as I've done in previous years, but it hasn't been as drastic of a difference as it was in books. So, I mean, we take with that, what we can, and it's all conjecture. We're just guessing at this point. But again, it all comes down to learning from it. One thing I learned is not to I'm already in my business. I already am pretty widespread as far as different niches I'm in. And I'll just make sure that I continue that in 2024 to not put all my eggs in one basket, not just within niches, but within platforms. People talking, we've talked about before about the KDP terminations and things like that. Don't just be on KDP, be in other platforms. And so, whether it's the products you're creating, the niches that you're in, or the platforms that you're on, I think, one of the things that we can take away from Q4 of 2023 is to, again, not put all your eggs in one basket, and to keep, try to be as widespread as possible, because it's just more avenues that are bringing in revenue for your business, for your overall business.
But also be aware not to spread yourself too thin, because sometimes, having too many baskets is quite difficult as well. So
and that's one thing that I'm doing differently this year is I'm going to be more, I'm going to be, again, more methodical. I'm going to make better decisions as far as where to spend my time. And not just, oh, I got a great idea. I'm still writing those things down, because even if I don't end up doing it this year, it may pan out next year. Or, if I find myself as we get closer to the end of the year and maybe I'm kind of, I don't have anything I'm working on or whatever, then that might be something that I can just kind of jump into. So it's always nice to have these little side ideas but yeah, it really coming down to, as I've said numerous times, is being more intentional and more methodical about the business, and like you said, spreading out, being more widespread, but not spreading myself out too thin. And
Mm.
that's one thing that I had done in 2023, because like we said, life happened in 2023 for me.
Mm.
And the last 6 months, I ended up spreading myself out way too thin. And
Mm.
that's one reason why I saw the results that I saw. And
Yeah.
I wasn't able to do as much as I had planned, because life happened, and to be honest, I didn't have certain things. I didn't have goals set. I didn't have timelines. I didn't. So when you don't have a timeline, it's a lot easier to push that off, because you don't have something tangible,
Yeah.
on the calendar that's getting closer and closer.
Yeah. That is very good advice. And I just hope everybody has a really good 2024,
Yes.
because, that, as you said, life happens, but we can plan for the best. And what's that saying? Plan for the best, or is that the hope for the
Prepare for
best
the
and
worst.
prepare
Hope
for
for the
the
best,
worst?
prepare for the worst. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
right. So let's do that.
Yeah. And again, it all comes down to preparing. It all comes down to setting
Yeah.
goals, and assessing those goals as you go.
Hmm.
I like your idea of having little goals, but then also have some bigger goals as well. And when life
Yeah.
happens, do you have to move that goal? Do you have to
Yeah.
move it? Because that's the first thing people always tend to do is, oh, I'll just add a month to it. Or do you think you can just put a little bit more time in now and you'll still meet that goal?
Yeah.
So yeah, it really comes down to just, I mean, preparation, I think, is the best thing. The best thing you can do is
That's
prepare, both prepare what you plan, as well as prepare for when life happens.
that's right. Hopefully it'll all go well.
Well, and worst case, just remember there's another Q4 next year.
Absolutely.
And this is a marathon, not a sprint. And regardless of what your business is, it just, again, going back to the consistency, as long as you're consistent,
Mm.
and that's the best way to not burn yourself out. And if you have to take time off because life happens, then do it.
Yeah.
But again, readjust your goals accordingly. Don't just throw them by the wayside, because that's the easiest way to not achieve them.
Mm.
Reassess them, change. It's very fluid. Throughout the year, things are going to happen. You might get something done faster than you expected. Something may take longer, and just adjust things accordingly.
Mm. Very good advice.
Well, this has been another great mastermind area. Once again, a huge thank you to all our listeners and viewers who came to tag along. If you enjoyed today's mastermind, please consider following or subscribing to the podcast, and maybe even leave us a review and let us know what you thought. Until next week, I'm Keith Wheeler.
And I'm Nuria Colby.
Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining the Mastermind today. Be sure to follow the podcast on your platform of choice and tell a friend who would enjoy it too. Your support is greatly appreciated. This has been the Masterminding Success Podcast.